we're back to our lesson series on hard truths. We left off in the Gospel of John where Jesus is talking to Pilate. Jesus is telling him that I'm telling you the truth, and Pilate is asking himself, well, what is truth? So we're there in John chapter 18, and we'll go back over these two verses before we dive in a little deeper on this concept of truth. Alright, so verse 37, chapter 18, Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say correctly that I am a king. For this purpose," so he's about to explain the purpose, "I have been born. For this I have come into the world, to testify to the truth." His purpose for coming into the world is to testify to the truth, to give us the gospel, to dispel all these other ways that people think that they can get to heaven, or the ways they can reach perfection. Okay, so he's telling them the truth, right? And then it says, "Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice." That's what Jesus is saying. Everyone who is of the truth, who belongs to the truth, who has the truth in them, hears this voice, hears his voice and listens to it. All right, in verse 38, Pilate replies, "What is truth?" Now the difference here that we didn't get into last week is Jesus here is the truth. Jesus knows the truth because his truth is God's truth. Okay? Pilate, who does not know God, who does not have any form of true objective truth in him, is unable to grasp this concept of truth. Okay? So what we have here are two different kind of truths that are going on in our world around us. Okay, we have the objective truth. Okay, the objective truth of things that are going on outside. Hey, the grass is green outside and the sky is blue. Okay, that is an objective truth. Okay, that is the fact of it. All right, another fact. There are billions of stars in the sky. So that's something that is an objective truth. Cannot be changed due to perspective. Now there's anomalies where there's colorblind people who aren't able to see the colors of the grass or see the colors of the sky, right? But that's not the standard. Okay? The standard of everyone of society knows that grass is green and the sky is blue. So that therefore is an objective truth. That is standing no matter what. You can stand on that truth. Jesus here has the objective truth. Pilate has a subjective truth. Now in Pilate's world, things change depending on who is the emperor at the time, or who has the most political clout in his region at the time, or who's in the favor of the emperor at that time. And then whatever's popular or whatever will elevate him or his colleagues or elevate someone, that becomes the truth. So if the emperor decides that he's God today, then everyone submits to that fact. And their previous ideas about who God was changes that day into a different truth, where because they're submitting to the forces of the culture, the forces of politics, their truth changes, and now the emperor becomes God. So you see, Pilate's concept of truth is very different than Jesus's concept of truth. So subjective with Pilate, objective with Jesus. Okay, so objective, unchanging. Okay, and subjective is changing, goes with the tides, the ebb and flow of different things in this world. And we see that, as we said last time, we see that in the world around us. People change their opinions about what they think is wrong or right based on what is going on in the world and what's going on with politics, or what's going on with political correctness, or whatever wherever they're gaining their idea of morality at that time from. Okay, and that is the sinking sand, right? That's not solid ground. Okay, So let's explore a little bit about this truth that Jesus is talking about. He says, I tell you the truth. And he's come to bear witness to the truth. So he's come to give witness, to tell other people about the truth. Right? So let's go back to John chapter 1 here. And let's review a little bit about who this Jesus is and how we know that he is truth. In chapter 1, verse 1, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him. And apart from him, not even one thing came into being that has come into being. So, in the beginning was this Word, who's personified by a he with a capital H. Alright, so spoiler alert there. And nothing came into being without him. In verse 4, it says, in him was this Word, in him was life, and the life was the light of mankind. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not grasp it. Hear what John the Apostle is talking about. John the Apostle is talking about Jesus Christ. But he's not talking about Jesus Christ who is incarnate, that he walked with on a daily basis when he was a disciple. John is talking about Jesus Christ in eternity past. Genesis chapter 1. How do we know that? Because John chapter 1 verse 14, he says, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we saw his glory. We saw his glory. Saying, we apostles saw his glory of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. There's that word again. John's testifying that Jesus Christ was full of truth. And then Jesus is telling Pilate, I know what the truth is, and I've come as a witness to bear the truth to the world. Alright, so let's go back even further. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 1, and let's see what's going on with this Word that John is talking about. Let's go back to Genesis 1 and see what's happening there. Genesis chapter 1 says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. God, the Trinity, created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was formless and desolate emptiness, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, let there be light. There's that. What happens when we say something? We say a word. Okay? And that word, we just found out in John chapter 1, verse 1, that word was with God and was God in the beginning. So how does Jesus know what the truth is? Jesus is the truth. Jesus was there in the beginning, and he's going to be there in the end. John chapter 14 tells us that Jesus said that I am the way and the truth and the life. He's the way to the truth. He is the truth, and he is the life. Which life comes from him, as we saw in Genesis 1. And Jesus is the Word that is spoken by God. So Jesus is standing there before Pilate. He's saying that I am come to bear witness to the truth, to tell you what the truth is, to show you the truth. And Pilate is saying, what is truth? And Jesus now, earlier on in the gospel, says that I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So you can't get to heaven. You can't get to salvation. You can't get to eternity. You can't get to a state of perfection unless you know the way and the truth. So our hard truth for today is Jesus is the only way to salvation. Jesus is the only truth. He is the truth. He knows the only truth. And he has documented it here in the Bible. As we said last week, we have to depend on an objective, unchanging truth in a world that changes with every new president, with every new trend that happens on social media. We have to rely on something that's unchanging. And this is what we depend on, as an unchanging, objective truth. We'll see you next time.